Hi, welcome to America Uncovered. I'm your host, Chris Chappell. Hey, what's for dinner?
Beef. It's what's for dinner.
Wow, thanks Beef Industry Council and Beef Board. I nearly went with vegetables. The problem of what to have for dinner is as old as time. Well, at least as old as the good times where humans have had a choice. And in modern America, we have more food choices than at any time in recorded history. Everything from a healthy salad to whatever this monstrosity is. All meat, no bun. It's the future my ancestors always wanted for their great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandson. But sadly, our futuristic food choices come at a cost. Since the government issued its first set of dietary guidelines in 1980, obesity and type 2 diabetes have doubled. Nice work, everyone. You see, to know what to eat, it seems we now need help from the government. But the government needs help every so often too. And that's where the big food lobby comes in. They're there to help the government understand, through generous contributions, that certain foods are very healthy for constituents. Remember the original food pyramid? No, not the one the US rolled out in 1992. I'm talking about the original Swedish one. Wow, that one looks pretty different from the one we got in the US. So how did this become this? Turns out, it was a bit of a pyramid scheme. According to Louise Light, an American nutritionist who worked on revising the American food pyramid, it was because of lobbying from the big food industry. Light said, "I vehemently protested that the changes, if followed, could lead to an epidemic of obesity and diabetes." Whoops. So what unfortunate changes were made? Well, for one, you may notice in the Swedish food pyramid, they didn't have a separate section for dairy. Fortunately, that problem was corrected when the US government issued its own food pyramid, which made the dairy industry very happy. Plus, according to Light, our recommendation of 3 to 4 daily servings of whole grain breads and cereals was changed to a whopping 6 to 11 servings as a concession to the processed wheat and corn industries. Which, if your mom ever sent you to school with a bread sandwich, you know that's a lot. I was a fat child. So why did the wheat, corn, and dairy industries have so much of a say in the food pyramid? Well, it starts with the fact that nutritional guidelines, like the food pyramid, are issued by the government agency, the USDA. That's the U.S. Department of Agriculture. The USDA does work with the Department of Health and Human Services on these guidelines. Still, the USDA is also responsible for farm production and marketing U.S. agricultural products, so you can see how there might be some conflicts of interest there. Of course, the fundamental challenge with issuing good nutrition guidelines is, if they're based on science, they would probably suggest that some foods are more healthful and you should eat more of them, and that other foods are not good for you and you should eat less of those. Sounds reasonable, right? But the idea that Americans should ever eat less of anything incited every agricultural and food processing lobbyist in the country to protest. Back in the 1980s, the American public was told to avoid too much sugar and avoid too much sodium. By the time the food pyramid was revised in 1995, the advice became choose a diet moderate in sugar and choose a diet moderate in salt and sodium. But certainly don't eat less of anything. Less is bad. We know that because in 2000, an advisory committee tried to get the recommendation changed to eat less salt and sugar. Then, Big Sugar stepped in. Instead, the 2000 guidelines say to moderate your intake of sugars. In 2011, the USDA issued My Food Plate. It's a little different from the 1992 food pyramid, but some things are the same, like that you should consume 2 to 3 cups of dairy every day. Yes, that much dairy is an essential part of all human diets, except for the 65% of humans who are lactose intolerant. There were other changes too, changes that ignored suggestions by a group of nutritionalists called the Advisory Committee. The advisory committee's scientific report lumped red meat in with processed meats, stuff like salami and hot dogs, and said that a healthy diet would mean eating lower amounts of these foods in order to prevent chronic diseases. But in the final guidelines, the government upgraded red meat to be as healthful as chicken or fish. And after years of warning that fat was dangerous, the latest recommendations no longer have restrictions on total fat intake. But these are just a bunch of dumb guidelines, and you can make your own choices, right? Right, you can, if you cook all your meals at home. But anything that involves government money and nutrition, like school lunch programs or welfare programs like WIC and SNAP, are affected by whatever the official nutrition guidelines are. That greasy school pizza? Well, 1/8 of a cup of tomato paste is credited with as much nutritional value as half a cup of vegetables, which is ridiculous. Tomato paste isn't a vegetable. Tomato paste is a fruit. But nutritional guidelines have done some good, like when the FDA targeted trans fat as being not generally recognized as safe and required the food industry to declare the amount of trans fat in food on the nutrition facts label. Many food manufacturers and fast food chains began cutting trans fat from their products, and that, according to this report from the Harvard School of Public Health, was one of the major reasons for a decline in premature death and a host of other diseases between 1999 and 2012. But is there a way to decrease the amount of influence that big food has on the USDA's nutritional guidelines? Some experts, like Louise Light, suggest moving the responsibility for creating food pyramids and plates from the USDA to the U.S. Health and Human Services, a government agency that doesn't have as many ties to the food industry or food lobbies. Others say that more transparency is needed in the process. So, at the end of the day, what should people be eating? Well, there's always going to be some debate. Some people say fat's bad. Some say it's good. Some say you shouldn't eat meat. Others say eat a lot of it. Milk does a body good, or maybe it doesn't. Whole grains are an important part of a balanced diet, or gluten will kill you. Even kale is controversial. Everyone agrees it's healthy, but should you eat it raw or cooked? I guess at the end of the day, you're going to eat whatever you want. Just don't swallow the lies. What do you think of the way the food industry changed how we eat? Leave your comments below. Once again, I'm your host, Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.